It is the 27th of June. Sorry, running a few minutes late, just trying to get all the technical stuff right here. And as usual, that's tough to do. But then again, it could be worse. You could be the state of Oregon, who can't get anything technical right, no matter what they do. And and people wonder aloud at times, gee, how come things don't work the way they're supposed to in the state of Oregon? Well, because you keep electing the same people to do the stuff that they can't do.
Well, if
But
it's IT, you know it's not going to work in the state of Oregon. I don't know how much time I spend with a spinning circle on a state website.
oh yeah, no, absolutely, and I don't. So and they're going to spend $689 million on broadband funding in Oregon. What could go wrong with that in a state that can't get technology right? Who knows?
Well,
I think someone will get rich.
let's hope they farm it out.
They would be better off just plowing that money into the lottery and then just saying whoever wins has to figure it out. It would be
Yeah,
it,
that's true. Even if the state farms it out, as we saw with the $500 million or $500 million Care Oregon debacle for a website that never worked, it still doesn't work and never will work. They farmed that out to Oracle and screwed that up.
Yep, and then they followed that up with subsequent other technology mishaps, like the employment department issuing checks and they couldn't do it when they had unemployment surging in 2020 and all this money, and then of course the latest is the famous, and this is what I was hinting at, of course, is the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, data breach, where somebody
Yeah.
just came in, basically stole the, the identity information. A Russian ransomware group stole 3.5 million identities from Oregonians, exposing their names, home addresses, driver's license numbers, and part of their social security numbers. And
Did they get any ransom? I know that's fairly common with government agencies.
it doesn't say that they got a ransom, but they are the DMV is very sorry this happened, of course, and that should be good enough for just about anybody who has their identity messed with. And then, and of course, uh, they want you to go ahead and take advantage of some um, credit monitoring services so you can watch as people steal your identity and know that it was the state of Oregon that made this all possible.
Yeah.
Um, but state officials and local cybersecurity experts have said Oregonians should assume their identity has been compromised and take steps to protect themselves. Yeah, I mean, I get that that's a good assumption in general. What's hilarious about it is we also have an attorney general who's supposed to look into these things and prosecute people, but she doesn't have time for this stuff. So she's too busy trying to make sure nobody can nail her for um, uh, overlooking the big bags of cash to her political bedfellows. Yes, it
Well,
happens.
if the state does get in a ransomware situation, I'm sure they could probably get Lamoda to pay them off.
That's right. See, finally, if they were smart, they'd say, "Look, we've figured this one out," and then they just have those people from Lamoda drive on down, giant bags of cash, meet the Russians in some alleyway in Portland. But then they'll probably both get mugged by some drug addicted urban camper who thought they were a meth deal was going down. You know,
Right.
so. Maybe they could launder it through some fentanyl. That way, they could distribute it to all the people in Portland that are seeking inexpensive fentanyl. That would be really
Yeah.
public service. Well, we got a little bit of an agenda tonight, and there's some national stuff that we haven't talked about in a few days, and it's pretty interesting because it looks like they're talking about impeachment in Washington D.C. And in this case,
Brandon? Impeaching
it's not.
Brandon?
Actually, that's a secondary issue. Although it does look, Kevin McCarthy says it looks like President Brandon lied. But actually, the target of the impeachment at this point is a guy who has been caught red-handed, it would seem, as a result of the IRS whistleblowers and the investigation into Hunter Biden. All these statements, sworn statements that Merrick Garland made, as well as ones that he went to the spokesman's podium and addressed, where he claims that he was totally hands off and nobody was messing with that investigation. We now know from somebody who was involved with the investigation and is now turned whistleblower that he actually did interfere with the investigation. He prevented the U.S. attorney from being given special counsel status and then claimed that the guy could do whatever he wanted anyway, which is nonsense because the things he was asking had to be approved by the attorney general. This guy, the U.S. Attorney Weiss, told 5 people, one of which is the whistleblower, and all the other people have been named now who they are. So Merrick Garland said, no, I was never requested to name a special counsel out of this guy so he could not get constantly log rolled and blocked in what he needed to do. And Weiss told these 5 people, I applied and was rejected. Well, here's the question that Jonathan Turley poses. Who is lying, Merrick Garland or the whistleblowers? And now that these people have been named, they can all be marched into a House Judiciary Committee and asked under oath what the answer is, what the truth is that they understand. They will give their information. And then Merrick Garland, who's been log rolling and slow walking all this stuff all along, as well as in his spare time investigating parents as domestic terrorists for attending school board meetings and being unhappy with the garbage that's going on in their schools. Then you bring in Merrick Garland, and Merrick Garland gets to speak. And if he doesn't show up, then what they're saying is it's time for Mr. Garland to experience impeachment, because then that compels, that empowers Congress to literally not only bring removal grounds forward, but also they can actually subpoena anything that they want. There's no slowing it down. No, you can't see this because of national security. No, nothing can stop them from. And we learned that because that was exactly what was adjudicated in the Trump impeachment. So now we know it's true, right? Mm-hmm. So, Jonathan Turley, who's a Democrat professor at George Washington University, but seems to be a real watchdog now for the misbehavior of the Brandon administration and people like Merrick Garland, who, by the way, was almost a Supreme Court justice. He came within he would have probably been confirmed almost certainly to the Supreme Court had it gone to a vote. And Merrick Garland, if he's lied about this case, then he should be impeached. And then that forces the Senate to hold a trial. Now, do I think enough Democrats will vote to remove him from office? No, but the guy would be just basically destroyed as a credible figure in a job which the only thing you have to have as the Attorney General is enough credibility. You have to have credibility as the top law enforcement official in the United States, and he would have zero because he will be proven to be a liar. So now, being a liar doesn't really stop Democrats from not only promoting but celebrating people like Adam Schiff, who lied for years about the Russia collusion. He got censured by the House of Representatives. I think only 3 people have ever had that happen. And but shouts of joy and approval rang across the House floor when he was censured. And apparently, Adam Schiff is the leading candidate for U.S. Senate to replace Dianne Feinstein in California. He has. Right. He's leading the polls with way more money than anyone else. So I don't
That
know. I
should,
mean,
that shouldn't stop him from becoming a senator, though. I mean, that's nobody
oh,
cares in
censor doesn't
California.
stop them. No, no,
No,
absolutely not.
no, and that's what would happen with Garland if he were impeached. He'd just go into Democrat politics.
Yeah, because that's how you rise in Democrat politics. You tell as many lies as you can. You cover up for somebody else, and then you either get a job in Democrat politics or you become a CNN or MSNBC paid contributor. There's
Yeah, well,
nothing in
that too.
between
Yeah,
there.
right. Yeah, yeah. It won't be a career ender for him. He may not be attorney general anymore, but I'm sure he'll rise within the ranks as a good, solid, far left liar.
Yeah. No, he is, but this is how they do it. They construct these complex schemes to cover things up while actually targeting political opponents. And this is what we are now experiencing. And in fact, the House Republican, the House of Representatives, the Republicans in the House of Representatives are also, they put forward what they say is new evidence that this entire thing all along says with new evidence, Congress unmasks a multi-year government plot to protect Biden and sully Trump.
No shock.
I know. Well, people are going to have to decide what kind of country they want to have. If they think that's the kind of country they want to have, and that's how we're going to have to play the game now, I guess that could go both ways. But then you don't really have a justice system anymore.
Yeah.
You just have people running around, uh, really just trying to destroy each other using a system that used to be called a justice system. Like,
Well,
really,
for the first time in U.S. history, we have a sitting president who arrested his rival in the next election. That's never happened before, I don't
in
think.
fact, he targeted him
Yeah.
specifically, right?
Yeah. So,
And
so it's probably time to replace the flagpole with a banana tree.
yes, we have gone full banana republic. And but I think Democrats know that if they can destroy the justice system, which they didn't care much for, it put too many of the people they thought were their core constituencies in jail at some point. So they decided, well, let's just blow that up and replace it with a system that we can just do whatever we want as long as we can get the media to help us cover it up.
Do you think it's lost on most Americans, the average rank and file American, that they now live in a country where the sitting president arrested the chief opponent? I mean, is that even registering in the American psyche, Kevin?
I don't think it is, because the full impact of that only happens if you have the media constantly mentioning it over and over again, how consequential that is. Instead, the media is spending all of its time cheering it on and telling people why it's so necessary and so needed, which that just doesn't lead to a good place in the end.
No, it doesn't. Well, we've seen where it leads. We've seen it, in many countries around the world. Communist countries, for the most part, that seems to be a favorite pastime of tyrannical dictators in various parts of the world, and it just seems odd to me that people are just not. It doesn't seem like people are as outraged and as shocked by this as they think they should be. But I think you nailed it, Kevin. If we had a media that said, "Wow, this is a monumental occasion in Americanism," I think more people would go, "Yeah, this is really kind of weird," but it's a fully complicit, fully wholly owned subsidiary of the Democratic National Committee.
It is. And on top of that, the only things that they like to talk about are historic, are when you have a complete
Yeah.
idiot that becomes vice president who issues
Yeah.
word salads, and then they have to hide her because her numbers go down every time she talks. Or when you have a spokes idiot who is historic because she's black and I don't know, lesbian or
Queer.
bisexual or whatever, and
Yeah.
yet she can't actually answer questions. All she does is go up there and snap at people and tell the media that already agree with her to behave, and that's it. She didn't do
Yeah.
anything else.
Well, I don't
That's
watch many press.
historic.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, that's the press's favorite historic. X so and so is the first X, Y, Z, A, B, C to be elected to the D, E, F, whatever it is. I remember lamenting when I ran for office and was crushed by a better candidate opponent than me. I recounted how tragic it was because in that particular House district there had never been a redheaded, blue-eyed, cisgendered male of Scottish descent uh, elected to that. And why people didn't recognize that and just elect me for that, I don't know why.
Well, there's historic and then there's historic. The only
And
the,
the
the only
voters
thing
of
that they want,
the voters of House District 18 missed a historic opportunity.
and if you had some help telling that story to all of them, I think that could have made the big difference, right? Giant mail
Yeah,
pieces with all the pictures like you in a kilt and all these kinds of things, right?
yeah. Instead, I got hit pieces from the Oregonian and television stations.
Speaking of hit pieces, apparently the Homeland Agency that has expanded its authority to wage domestic surveillance and censorship on citizens, and a House Republican Judiciary Committee report has presented this and said that this is actually what it appears to have done. It expanded its permission to surveil American speech on social media, collude with big tech and government funded third parties to censor by proxy, and tried to hide its plainly unconstitutional activities from the public. And they were trying to hide it because they're like, well, it's wrong, but we just want to do it. And and they said that the severe public outcry in spring of 2022 against the Department of Homeland Security's Disinformation Governance Board caused it to close. But Democrats are constantly trying to bring this back in another form. And then they also tried to cover their tracks of what they were actually going to do with that group.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that wander off the reservation now that they have platforms to do it, and I think the United States, well, the world, but we live in the United States and Oregon. It's been pretty much wrapped up by far left media. I mean, there's messaging and truth don't escape that. It's not escaped out in the wild like it is now. Now you have people like Tucker Carlson who can say whatever the hell he wants on Twitter. And he is saying whatever the hell he wants on Twitter, and it's got to be very difficult for the DNC and their wholly owned group of media sycophants to deal with that. I mean, it's so much easier if you could just shut the people up that you don't want talking. It's just so much easier.
It is, and actually, they found specific instances that they put out in this report, as we know, with like the Hunter Biden laptop, where these entities and these agencies, such as the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, implicitly admitted that it targeted true content to have it removed, content they knew to be true. And they went out of their way to have it removed. And that apparently is providing greater cybersecurity in our country.
I know. God, I feel like I should be making cigars, fine Cuban cigars.
Well, and then, by the way, during the investigation, the communications between these different agencies and the Disinformation Governance Board staff and this Nina Jankowicz, remember her, the one that had that supercalifragilisticexpialidocious song that she made out of
Oh
disinformation.
God. Oh
Yeah,
man. That
yeah.
was make a cringe.
So they tried to hide the legal justifications and the talking points that they were exchanging because they were worried about blowback. So they heavily redacted the documents. This stuff that they're doing, where it used to be that you had to hide information because it would jeopardize national security. Now all it does is jeopardize the job security of politicians and bureaucrats that have nothing to do with protecting the country, just themselves. And yet, I just don't understand how they get away with redacting stuff. They get to decide what of their own communications we get to see. When did that start?
Well, I'm sure it started quite some time ago, but I mean, the fact is, Kevin, is this particular government that we have in the United States of America cannot exist with an informed and moral electorate. And so we see all the stops being pulled out to make sure that we're not informed. And we see all of the stops and all of the policy being put into place where we're not particularly moral either. I mean, the normalization of pedophilia, is an issue. The sexual mutilation of minors, being written into law. I mean, this is but probably the biggest threat is not really the moral part of that equation, but the informed part of that equation, because an informed electorate is going to vote you out. And
that's what we need. That's why we do this show. And we also know that that's why we have to keep shouting it from the mountaintops, because remember when the media thought whistleblowers were, nearly saints, living saints who could not be criticized or even exposed in any way.
Right.
And the Brandon administration regularly, the media accepts leaks from the Brandon administration, which is legally obligated to protect whistleblowers. And then they fire them and move them to other jobs and things like that to retaliate against them. And that happens every day. Voters should know that when you have a whistleblower, you should probably at least give them a proper hearing and then try to see if what they said comports with the facts and the rest of the investigation. And they're coming out all over the place. Nearly all this bad juju that the Brandon administration's been engaging in is being exposed now. And yet I think the media has tried to make it sound like it's just disgruntled people, MAGA Republicans, blah,
Trump.
blah, blah. Yeah.
Trump conspiracy theorists. It's all conspiracy, folks. There's nothing to see here. Swamp gas. Look at me.
UFOs.
Here it is right here.
Look at UFOs.
Me. Look at me.
Well, and then again, even when it's blatant, and now we're getting to President Brandon himself. Apparently, he's being roasted for joking during this recent state visit, at which Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, was hanging out with Hunter Biden, the same event. And they just couldn't see anything wrong with that after he just pled guilty to federal charges. They saw no problem. Oh, Brandon takes the stage, and he said, I sold a lot of state secrets and a lot of very important things that we shared.
Can you imagine being his handlers? Can you imagine having, geez, turn the mic off. God, Joe.
And then he says, now, all kidding aside, look, we're teaming up to design and develop new technologies. Yeah, we just heard about them. You're using them to silence people and shut them down and spy on them. Your political opponents. This is, but the media will cover up the fact that he actually said this. If Trump had said that, let's say he said that I sold a lot of state secrets to Vladimir Putin, and he said it in the middle of the Trump-Russia collusion height of things, it would have been 24/7 for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and there would have been impeachment charges. That's what would have happened, right? There's no doubt about it. There's no way that the media will let that go. They'll say nothing about this. Now,
Yeah.
it's all caused an uproar because the RNC posted it on Twitter, and they showed him saying, "I sold a lot of state secrets," and then other
Yeah.
people added in, "Yes, but he was just kidding."
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that after
Ha ha ha!
decades,
Very funny. Nice joke.
I would imagine after decades and decades of carrying the water for Democrats and basically reading press releases and calling it news, that there's a normalcy bias within media where everything is just dismissed when it comes from a Democrat, whether it be Clinton, whether it be Obama, whether it be Biden. Oh, he didn't mean that. I mean. Now, if Trump had said that, we'd be breaking in. We'd be this. If Trump said that on Super Bowl Sunday, the news would be breaking in on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they would show a graphic of Gallows with his arms and head through it.
Right.
They would actually, and they would get that done in about 5 minutes. They'd take everybody off the Super Bowl statistical updates at halftime and put them on generating the graphics showing Trump being, executed. And of course, we know that Democrats have actually called for him to be shot in Congress. Consequences? Nothing. No.
Yeah.
Just fine.
Yeah.
So I posted that. People can go ahead and look at that article. But apparently voters are starting to figure this out. Apparently voters have soured on Biden on a whole range of issues in a poll that is being described as, to put it mildly, buyer's remorse. It says Trump would emerge as a clear favorite with 45% opting for the Republican to 39% who sided with the incumbent. I'm amazed that actually that guy gets 39%. But there are about a third of the people in the country are either in a coma or nuts at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no small amount of people who will change their support for any Democrat that's in power at any given time throughout their lifetime. So,
yeah, that's true.
And there's probably a fair amount of Republicans do the same thing.
It says 15% of voters surveyed were unsure how they would vote. Now that is something, because these are people who just haven't seen enough of the President Brandon disaster roadshow that's been going on here since 2021, and they must actually, those are the people in a coma.
The antique President Roadshow.
Exactly, antique President Roadshow. Yeah, he's one of those. He's like some of that silverware that has all the gunk on it, over in the side that somebody left in a bag of rotted feces, and they pulled it out and said, "Oh, look.
This piece is really tarnished, and you can tell that it's it's very, very old. It's seen a lot, but if you clean it up, I think this will probably bring $3, maybe $4 at auction."
Yeah, that's right. So Biden approval on the economy 39%, 35% on immigration, 37% on crime and violence, 36% on inflation. They think, now this is where it's interesting, because it says he's done a good job fighting terrorism. 43% is a good job, I guess.
Fighting terrorism. He gave $80 billion worth of military equipment to freaking Al Qaeda.
I know, and they're out using it against innocent civilians to put the hurt on them. They think he's
selling it to other people who want to do the same.
That's right. There's, I guess it's going to take time to sink in. Now they are saying that 59% are expressing doubts about his mental acuity. I question why there's even only 59%.
Forget the president.
That's right. Well, actually, and then maybe 10% said, "Who's the president right now?" So,
there's a fair amount of that.
And 66% saying that he's showing he is too old to serve in office. So the numbers are going up. Yeah, this is where we're at in this country and why the information war is the war. Because if, as you said, if the voters are pretty smart, if they get the right information, they can actually make a decent decision. Enough of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's we've talked about this before. I think you were talking about it's either you or no, maybe it was on the show with Sonny and Joel from Marion County, but they were talking about voters and stuff, and I thought about, and I know you've knocked plenty of doors, made plenty of, manned the phones, many a phone bank, but it's amazing. You can talk to 1,000 voters, and 30% of them don't know there's an election. 60% of them haven't the slightest idea who represents them anywhere at
Yeah.
any level, and it's just it's it's it seems like a daunting task to get from where we are now to an informed electorate.
Well, to help voters, the acting Oregon Secretary of State is celebrating today some legislation that passed in the recent legislative session that's apparently going to help voters immensely, such as ranked choice voting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Rube Goldberg design for elections so that you can't possibly figure out what your vote did.
Yeah.
And
well, just when you think it can't get any more up, they bring out ranked choice voting.
Exactly. And they're going to expand automatic voter registration so that they automatically register people who are unregistered on the Oregon Health Plan. Believe they actually have not offered, despite the statutory requirement, any concrete assurances that it will not register the great many people who are not legally present and nor are citizens in the United States that happen to be illegally present in Oregon. They will somehow not be registered, and they haven't told us how that's going to happen, because that's what you get on the Oregon Health Plan. There's a lot of people who just don't have any means to purchase health insurance, and that also would include all the indigent folks that are coming in from other states to do fentanyl and meth in tents in Portland. They did whine about some investments in election funding being cut, but then others have increased. And apparently, one of the things that they have increased is legislative funding programs designed to combat false election information. They are now that was cut. Oh, that's good news.
That is good
news. They were whining because Washington, California, and Colorado, who are so good at telling the truth, are going to spend more money on this. So I guess that accidentally something happened, but she was whining about that. And they're also going to make sure that native voices are included in the public records of the state, which is going to help everyone immensely in the next election. So I don't know. This is the Secretary of State who's supposed to be acting like a Secretary of State, but ranked choice voting is the super big stinker there.
Yeah. Well, it's being referred to the voters, so hopefully the voters will see through it. But it's difficult to explain, and maybe that's a good thing. But being difficult to explain, it's probably a little difficult to counter, because in order to counter it, you're going to have to explain it, and it's pretty screwed up. I think wasn't it Reschke that said yesterday that it's a solution looking for a problem?
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to have the side effect. I think the big problem, I think I mentioned this last night, is the ballot title is probably not going to tell you exactly what it is. It's going to talk about the virtue of, well, this is going to save us. It's going to expand voter participation,
right?
And it's going to eliminate the need for primary elections
Right.
for many offices, because you can just do the election in one go, and then you only have to vote once. Yay! There you
Right.
go.
We'll save a lot of money.
Save all this money. Yeah, they're going to have all these things and all of the, and we're going to have to explain to people why it's just a complete, you know what, show.
Yeah. Well, in the state of Oregon, it should be really this simple. If Democrats in Salem passed it, it's not good for you.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
good
it's
for
good for
them.
them.
It's not good for you.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of things not good for you, it would appear that the Archdiocese of Portland, which is apparently the second largest school system, they oversee the second largest school system in the state. It's all
Really?
the Catholic grade schools, middle schools, and high schools. They're
Yeah.
having an interesting thing occur. And there's several articles about it. Very interesting. The Archbishop has temporarily closed the Department of Catholic Schools that oversees the school system. And the reason why is because the Archbishop, after a parent and teacher backlash against this, um, the Archbishop has decided that whoever in this department decided to have a new policy forcing everyone to address students by their chosen pronouns
Mm.
was not going to work, because the Catholic Church actually doesn't believe in a zillion genders. It believes in two.
Well, neither does science. Science doesn't believe in more than two genders. Biology does not believe in more than two genders. Nature does not believe in more than two genders. So I would say the Catholic Church and every other reasonable thinking, logical human being, citizen of this country, I think we're all on the same page on that. That's the right way to think.
It is. And, I think the Archbishop is standing up for a belief system that he believes actually should influence
It's
or be
science.
embedded in, well, and science, and also they're Catholic schools. They're not just schools that happen to get money from Catholic.
Public schools shouldn't be teaching that shit. I mean, it's like taking. I mean, I think, and maybe I'm wrong on this, that the science on gender is settled.
Yes, as they like to say, right? The science is settled.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can question science, and certainly you should, but 9 out of 10, 9 out of 10 scientists agree that the chromosomes will determine your gender.
Well, I think that if folks are Catholic and they want to let the Archbishop know that they appreciate what he's doing, they should contact his office. And, there's going to be loud voices screaming at him saying, but they're a very small group that's going to go and scream at him.
Oh gosh,
and maybe he just needs to hear from everyone else. But it's funny you mentioned about science, because there's another aspect to this. By the way, I think I posted, there's 3 articles here about what's going on in the Archdiocese, and you can see it's everywhere, right? It's pervaded our society. We're having all these discussions about this instead of like the big problems that really need to be solved. We're creating these other problems and spending all our time and energy fighting over them, because there's really, frankly, a kind of a quasi-Marxist effort to promote these things. But you mentioned about science, and there's actually another story that a biologist has been fired.
San Antonio.
It was in Texas. And I'm trying to find the article here, but it was, oh yeah, here we go. He, Johnson Barkey, is a professor, has been a professor for 20 years teaching anatomy and physiology at St. Philip's College, which is part of the Alamo Community College District of Texas.
Right.
And he's taught 1,500 students in his time, but apparently a few of them become offended when they did what he's essentially been fired for, quote, violating the faculty code of professional ethics based on, quote, several reports, unquote, that he committed, quote, religious preaching, discriminatory comments about homosexuals and transgender individuals, anti-abortion rhetoric, and misogynist banter, unquote. However, what he said he was doing was teaching that chromosomes, X and Y chromosomes, produce two genders and two genders only.
Every time.
Every time. And that he's been teaching this for decades, but apparently they are exceedingly angry about that. What was
Yeah.
that?
I said that science has changed, apparently, Kevin.
They've updated the science, and now you've got these cultural elites that believe that they can tell a scientist what biology is. And by the way, I forgot to wear my shirt today that says I'm not a biologist, but I vote Republican.
Right.
So just like you said, it's science. So they're trying to unsettle the science by using something that isn't science to destroy science.
Right. Well, transgenderism or a transgender is scientifically and biologically impossible. No one will ever have their chromosomes change. Their DNA will never change. And when their bodies are discovered by an archaeologist 1,000 years from now, they will be identified by their biological gender because they have slightly different bone structures. So, the fact that we're having this, the fact that the archdiocese has to make this a religious freedom argument, it shows you how far down we've gone in society when you have to resort to a First Amendment right or a First Amendment protection to guard you against illogical, unscientific, unbiological inaccuracies.
Yeah.
It's just it's like somebody being fired for saying that the sun sets in the east, and it's always set in the east, and it's always going to set in the east.
Yeah, and getting fired for saying, I mean, they used to criticize, say, the Catholic Church for being opposed to science back when there was a debate about whether the earth was round or flat, right?
Yeah.
Now we've got people claiming something that isn't supported by science, and then when the Catholic Church says the right thing and says we're not going to have that taught in the schools,
yeah, we have 10,000 years of biological history to draw from.
That's right. No, that's exactly it. So, well, the last thing here that we had on our agenda was to talk about the Oregon legislature funding the state's share. I guess it's like $2 billion of the replacement for the I-5 bridge. And you and I have been around long enough to remember something from about 10 years ago called the Columbia River Crossing, where they spent several $100 million and they studied it and then never built a damn thing.
Yeah.
So I'm making a prediction. They're going to have all this money and they're going to study it, and then they're going to come up with a super stinker of an idea where they want to build a bridge that will let less traffic go through.
Yeah.
Add a max line no one will ride.
A bike lane.
And then it'll drag on, and then they'll never build a damn thing. But they'll spend 10 times as much money studying it.
Right.
That's my prediction.
Yeah, they will. They will. Yeah. I mean, the last study cost $200 million. This one's got to at least cost $300 million, maybe $400 million. I guess it all depends on how much money they allocate for that. But you're right. They're going to come up with a bridge that allows no more traffic, probably less traffic, but at the very least, no more traffic through. But it will have several bike lanes. It will have electric car charging stations. It will have electric car an electric car lane, it'll have windmills all the way on it, and maybe the surface will be solar panels, and then of course a half a dozen Max train lanes that nobody rides except for the thieves that take them and loot the malls and then go home to the suburbs.
And it will be decorated with gender-affirming art and that's my prediction.
It'll have rainbow. It'll have LEDs embedded in the side that can do a rainbow. You know that.
Exactly. In fact, it'll be Pride Day every day. We'll have a Pride show. Almost like a special light show each night.
Yeah. And the rest of us would look at it and go, "Oh, good. There's God's promise that God's promise that the earth will never ever be flooded again." And the rest.
So much for building a bridge over a body of water. You blew that.
Yeah, I think we did. Didn't we talk about Jeff Reynolds' article that you can't validate the lie. You can't buy into these lies. You have to take the words back. You have to take the rainbows back. You have to take all this crap back, and you just can't buy into the lies. No. And I refuse to. I mean, I've told everybody on the show that and it's happened when, I guess I should say when, because it has happened, when I get an email, regardless of who it is from, and the last one I got was from a state agency regarding a fairly important matter, and somebody includes their pronouns, I will not return that communication. I'm not buying into that shit. I learned English. My mother was European. It was extremely important that I use the King's English. And so you can't change it. You can't tell me you're a they or a them.
So I am going to reply to those emails, but what I'm going to do is, since they're trying to destroy English, I'm going to reply to them in a font called Wingdings, I think it is, where it's actual letters, but you can't read any of them.
Right.
And then they have to figure it out.
All right. I'll try that. Maybe I'll dig that email out and try that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Jeff Reynolds, he's got a new article that he just put out. I think you wanted to kind of summarize what that is, so they can get a look at that. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but
his new article that he just did, and of course Jeff is one of the founding members of this show, longtime member of the Oregon Republican Party executive committee, fellow Tea Partier like myself, and he wrote something that he titled "It's Time for the Oregon the Oregon Republican Party Needs an Intervention." And those of us, that have been part of the party, and you're still part of the party, have seen the party take quite a slide downhill since February of 2021, when a handful of senators, not all of them, I guess only one of them is a senator now, Dennis Linthicum, but he was smart enough to get out early. He saw the handwriting on the wall and said, "I'm not going to be part of this. This is not what I signed on for." But since the other two senators staged the takeover of the Oregon Republican Party, where they thought that there would be campaign finance reform because of Measure whatever it was that allowed that, and that money would be flowing through the party once again, like it does in other states who have campaign contribution limits. And they had this grand plan, and none of it worked out. So they all bailed. And so now we have an Oregon Republican Party that has had, 4 chairmans in the last 3 years, 3 chairmans in the last 2 years.
Yeah, we had one for 6 years, who was a vice chair for 2 years before that,
right.
and then since that change, we're on our 3rd chair, I think.
Yeah, well, and that trajectory was like this, that 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, all the metrics were up. I mean, we had a statewide win in 2016. We registered 65,000 new voters, somewhere between, I forget when, but in that time period, our fundraising had gone up, immensely. our PCP participation rate, the number of PCPs that were elected, had skyrocketed, and the party was really it was actually on an upward trend. I mean, first statewide victory in what, 28 years or something like that, with Dennis Richardson as Secretary of State, and then and then it all just came crashing down, and so now the party is facing an investigation by the FEC.
Yeah.
Because the treasurer of the time, who's no longer the treasurer, we have a new treasurer now, he resigned before all of this came to light. So there's an FEC investigation. There was already been an investigation, I guess, if you will, by the Secretary of State, and I think more than $5,000 in fines have been levied. And apparently those were paid in March, and no one said anything to anyone about it. Did you remember hearing about that on the executive committee?
No.
No. So
no, there's been no. There actually hasn't been a meeting. So
yeah,
I'm on it, but there hasn't been a meeting involving the executive committee, which is the most representative group that gets together
absolutely,
between
yeah.
the state central committee, which is the one that has representatives from every county. And I think that Jeff points out some stuff that they said that we should focus on. We should focus on recruiting candidates. I know myself it would be great to have even more help on school board elections, because I helped out with one. Focus on fundraising, and of course making sure that you take care of all of the administrative stuff. He points out in his article here, you gotta just be perfect on all the treasurer stuff and all the stuff interacting with these entities like the FEC and the Secretary of State. And then lastly, he says, build a grassroots army to challenge the dominance of the Democrats in Oregon. And I would add to this list a ballot harvest with that grassroots army, because we either do it or we just watch them.
Or we get beat by it.
Yeah.
We do it or get beat by it. So I agree with it.
Yeah, I know I'm going to continue to exert my influence to produce these outcomes. But sometimes you got to hear something that doesn't make you happy about an entity that we've all tried to make successful over the years.
Yeah.
And this is where we can take it, listen to it, and make it better.
Well, I think he nailed it when he titled it. An intervention does need to happen. I mean, the course they need a serious course correction, and that's going to take some leadership, and that's going to take some vision, and that might be lacking right now. So,
well, folks, get out there, let your local party know what you want to see happen. Share with them your desire to see success in 2024 and to do these very important things that need to be done. I think that covers it for tonight, Mr. David Darnell. Thank you for joining me here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching us. Please share the show with everyone you can. Share it with at least one person you think didn't see it or hasn't seen it. And they'll at least be infotained by a world gone mad that we like to point out is run by Democrats in these cases, but also needs to be responded to effectively by Republicans, and we're going to continue pushing for that too. Thanks again, and have a great evening, everybody. Tomorrow, I think you'll see Sunny and Don back with the next episode of the Captive Audience.